I woke up on the morning of my 80th birthday filled with anticipation, the kind that had always made me feel cherished. I envisioned my family's faces lighting up the room, their laughter wrapping around me like a warm embrace, and the familiar sounds of celebration filling the air. But as the sunlight poured through my window, an unsettling silence enveloped my apartment. No phone calls, no messages, not even a simple text. My heart sank as I realized that my family had forgotten my special day. My name is Evelyn, and I was about to embark on a journey that would teach me that love and connection could be found in the most unexpected places. But before I delve into my story, let me know in the comments how you celebrate your birthdays and if you've ever felt overlooked. If you enjoy what you hear, consider subscribing to join me on this journey of rediscovery. Now, let's get into my story. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of the day before me, a day I had anticipated with such hope now stretching out empty and hollow. My name is Evelyn, and I have spent the better part of 8 decades weaving a life filled with love, family, and tradition. My children and grandchildren were my pride and joy, the bright centers of my world. Every birthday had been a celebration, a gathering of souls who told stories and shared meals, who toasted to my health and happiness. Yet this morning, the silence was deafening. I reached over to my nightstand, fingers trembling slightly, and picked up my phone. No missed calls. No texts. No notifications at all. I stared at the glowing screen, disbelief washing over me in waves. How could they have forgotten? Was it possible that after all these years, my family had simply overlooked this milestone? My heart pounded with a mixture of shock and hurt, and I felt a sudden, sharp pang of loneliness, as if the very ground beneath me had shifted. The apartment around me felt colder, less like home. I stood and moved to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. The spring air was fresh and bright, birds chirping in the distance, life carrying on as usual. And yet, here I was, invisible in my own world. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around me, a feeble shield against the empty space that stretched between me and the family I thought I knew. I thought back to birthdays past. The sense of fresh-baked cake mingling with the aroma of roasting coffee. My daughter's laughter as she told a silly story, my son's proud smile as he handed me a carefully chosen gift. The little hands of my grandchildren tugging at my sleeves, their bright eyes shining with joy. We had always gathered, filling the rooms with love and warmth that seeped into my bones. Those memories now felt like echoes from a distant place, unreachable and fading. As the clock ticked past noon, the silence remained unbroken. I tried not to let the hurt consume me, reminding myself that sometimes life's rhythms falter, that people get busy, distracted, or overwhelmed. But deep down, I knew this was more than an oversight. It was a fracture, a quiet betrayal that stung more than any harsh word could. I was left to sit with the question that loomed large and unwelcome: had I become invisible to those I loved most? I wandered into the kitchen, making myself a cup of tea, the familiar rituals offering a small comfort. I sipped slowly, the warmth spreading through me, grounding me for a moment. I glanced at the calendar on the fridge, the date circled in bright red marker, a reminder of the day I had hoped to share with my family. Instead, I faced the day alone, a milestone marked not by celebration, but by absence. Yet even in the quiet, a small voice inside me whispered that perhaps this was a moment to reclaim. A chance to find joy beyond the familiar, to seek connection in unexpected places. I had spent so much of my life centering others, my children, my grandchildren, my friends, sometimes at the expense of my own needs and desires. Maybe today could be different. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and settled into my favorite chair by the window, the soft light casting gentle shadows across the room. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steady the swirl of emotions inside me. I thought about the years ahead, the stories yet to be written, and the possibility that I could still find happiness on my own terms. The day stretched on, the silence unbroken except for the ticking of the clock and the occasional chirp of a bird outside. I tried to keep busy, tidying up the apartment, flipping through old photo albums, recalling moments of joy and laughter. But the ache of being forgotten lingered, a quiet companion that shadowed every thought. As evening approached, the sky painted itself in soft hues of pink and gold. I found myself reaching for the phone once more. I debated calling my children, wondering if I should voice the hurt that had settled in my chest. But a part of me hesitated, afraid of what their answers might be, or worse, the absence of answers. Instead, I set the phone down and looked around the room, at the familiar walls and the comfortable furniture that had witnessed so many chapters of my life. I thought about the stories I had yet to tell, the laughter I still wanted to share. And in that quiet moment, a spark of resolve flickered to life. I might be alone today, but I was not defeated. This birthday, forgotten by my family, could still be a day of meaning, a day to honor myself. I could choose to find joy, to seek connection beyond the walls of this apartment. After all, life had taught me that love and belonging sometimes came from the most unexpected places. I didn't yet know how or where, but I promised myself I would not let this day slip away into sorrow. Instead, I would find a way to celebrate my 80 years, to embrace the journey that had brought me here, and to open my heart to new possibilities. For now, I sat quietly by the window, the fading light wrapping me in its gentle embrace. The world outside moved on, indifferent yet full of promise. And so would I. The hours passed slowly, each tick of the clock amplifying the hollow space where my family's presence should have been. No calls, no texts, no messages from my children or grandchildren. Not even a note left at the door or a card slipped under the mat. The absence was so complete it felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I tried to tell myself it was an oversight, a busy day for everyone, but the silence stretched on, relentless and unforgiving. My phone remained stubbornly quiet in my lap, mocking the hope I had clung to since morning. I checked it again and again, as if sheer willpower could summon a call or a message. But the screen stayed dark, indifferent to my longing. The loneliness settled deep within me, sharper than I expected. It was more than just being alone, it was feeling invisible to the people I had devoted my life to. I thought about the years spent nurturing my family, the sacrifices made, the celebrations hosted, the countless birthdays I had helped make special for others. And now, on my own milestone, there was nothing. No acknowledgement, no recognition, no love. I felt a swirl of emotions I hadn't anticipated, hurt, confusion, and a profound sense of betrayal. How could they forget me? Was I really so easily cast aside? The thought pierced through me, deeper than any physical pain. I questioned my place in their lives, wondering if the bonds I treasured were simply illusions I had built to shield myself from the harshness of reality. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as the ache of abandonment settled in. I wanted to scream, to demand to be seen, to be remembered. But instead, I sat quietly, the silence around me growing louder with each passing moment. I felt like a ghost drifting through my own home, a visitor in a life that no longer included me. I thought about calling my daughter, Sarah. She was usually the first to remember, the one who always made sure I felt special. But what would I say? How could I voice the sting of being forgotten without sounding bitter or hurt? The fear of disappointing her, or worse, being dismissed, held me back. I imagined her busy with her own life, juggling work and children, and wondered if I had become just one more responsibility she no longer had the energy to shoulder. The thought made me ache even more. I had always been the one to offer support, to listen and advise, to be there when they needed me. Now, I realized I needed them, and their absence was a wound that throbbed with every heartbeat. I tried to distract myself, moving from room to room, picking up books and photo albums, but nothing could fill the void. The familiar faces staring back at me from yellowed pages only deepened the loneliness. I remembered happier times, my birthday parties filled with laughter, the smell of fresh flowers and homemade cake, the warmth of my family gathered around me. Those memories were bittersweet now, reminders of what I had lost. As the afternoon wore on, I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. Anger at being forgotten, at feeling unimportant, at the seeming disregard for the years of love and care I had given. Sadness for the gap growing between me and my family, a chasm that felt impossible to bridge. I wrestled with the question of whether this was a one-time mistake or a sign of something deeper, a shift in the relationships I had held sacred. Despite the pain, a part of me resisted sinking into despair. I reminded myself that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of finding joy and connection. But the struggle was real and raw. The loneliness wrapped around me like a thick fog, and I had to fight to keep my chin up, to hold on to a flicker of hope. As evening approached, the weight of the day pressed down harder. The silence no longer felt like mere absence, it felt like rejection. I imagined my family gathered elsewhere, celebrating without me, their laughter echoing in spaces I once called home. The thought was unbearable. I found myself reaching for the phone again, fingers trembling as I dialed my daughter's number. The call went unanswered. I left a quiet voicemail, my voice steady but soft, wishing her a happy birthday to me, hoping she would call back. But the silence lingered. After hanging up, I sat in the dimming light, heart aching with a loneliness I hadn't expected to feel so sharply at this stage in life. I thought about the years ahead, the milestones yet to come, and wondered if they too would pass unnoticed. I realized then that this day was more than just a forgotten birthday, it was a turning point. I could continue waiting for their attention and risk losing myself in the process, or I could find a way to reclaim my joy and sense of belonging. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. With a deep breath, I pushed myself up from the chair and moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Somewhere out there, life was moving on, full of possibilities I had yet to explore. Maybe, just maybe, I could find connection in places I hadn't considered before. The sting of betrayal still lingered, but beneath it, a quiet resolve was beginning to grow. I was determined not to let this day define me or my happiness. If my family had forgotten, then I would remember myself. I would find a way to celebrate, to feel loved and seen, even if it meant stepping outside the familiar. For now, the night wrapped around me, heavy with loneliness but also shimmering with the faintest promise of something new. I wasn't sure what that would look like yet, but I knew one thing, I would not let the silence of this day silence my spirit. As the evening deepened into night, I found myself restless, the ache of loneliness still gnawing at me despite my quiet resolve. I sat by the window, the city lights flickering like distant stars, reminding me that life was moving forward even when I felt stuck in place. The silence in my apartment was suffocating, but somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe this day didn't have to end in sorrow. I reached for the remote and flicked through the channels, my eyes scanning the screen without really seeing. Then, as if by chance or fate, an advertisement caught my attention, an invitation to join a last-minute cruise leaving from the nearby port. The images of the sparkling ocean, warm sun, and smiling faces stirred something unexpected in me, a flicker of hope, a spark of adventure. The idea was wild. Me, 80 years old, booking a spontaneous trip alone? It felt both thrilling and terrifying. I hadn't traveled like that in years, and the thought of spending my birthday surrounded by strangers was daunting. But the promise of new experiences, fresh air, and the chance to break away from the heavy silence of my apartment was irresistible. Yet, doubt crept in quickly. What if I was making a mistake? What if I felt even more alone among unfamiliar faces? What if I was just running away from the pain? The questions circled in my mind, threatening to snuff out the small flame of excitement I had just kindled. The next morning, as sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, I found myself still caught between hesitation and hope. The loneliness of yesterday clung to me, but so did the yearning for something different. I reminded myself that I had spent so much of my life putting others first, my children, my grandchildren, my friends, and maybe it was time to put myself first, even if just for a little while. I decided to call my neighbor, Mrs. Clark, a kind woman who lived down the hall. She had always been a comforting presence, someone who noticed when I was feeling down and offered gentle words of encouragement. When I shared my thoughts about the cruise, I expected skepticism or gentle discouragement, but instead, she surprised me. "Evelyn, dear," she said warmly, "you deserve to feel joy and be celebrated, especially on your birthday. Don't let fear hold you back. Sometimes, the best gifts come from stepping outside what's familiar. You'll meet new people, see new places, and maybe find a little piece of happiness you didn't know was waiting for you." Her words echoed in my heart long after the call ended. I realized that maybe the fear I felt was a barrier I could overcome, and that choosing to embrace the unknown was an act of courage, not recklessness. With renewed determination, I began making practical plans. I checked my savings and found I had just enough to cover the trip without jeopardizing my daily needs. I packed a small bag with essentials, comfortable clothes, a couple of books, my favorite scarf, and a few photographs to remind me of home. The act of preparing felt empowering, a tangible step toward reclaiming my life. As I zipped up my suitcase, a mix of emotions swirling inside me, I felt a strange but welcome sensation, anticipation. The fear was still there, but it was accompanied by a thrill I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was about to embark on an adventure, not just a physical journey but a journey into rediscovering myself. The hours before departure were filled with a curious blend of nervousness and excitement. I double-checked my tickets and itinerary, made sure my phone was charged, and even practiced a few polite greetings in my head to ease the inevitable small talk with strangers. I thought about the faces I might meet, the stories I might hear, and the moments of laughter waiting to be shared. Before I left, I sat down with a cup of tea, allowing myself a quiet moment of reflection. I acknowledged the sadness that lingered from being forgotten, but I also embraced the hope that today, I was choosing a different path. I was choosing to celebrate myself, to seek connection beyond the confines of my apartment and the expectations of my family. As I locked the door behind me and stepped into the fresh morning air, the sun warmed my face, and a gentle breeze whispered promises of new beginnings. I felt a lightness in my step, a sense of possibility that had been missing for far too long. The taxi ride to the port was a blur of city streets and passing faces, but my mind was focused on the horizon, the vast, open sea waiting to welcome me. The cruise ship loomed large and inviting, its decks alive with activity and the hum of anticipation. I clutched my bag tightly and took a deep breath, steadying myself for the unknown. Boarding the ship, I was greeted by friendly smiles and welcoming words from the crew. The air smelled of salt and sunshine, a refreshing contrast to the stale stillness I had left behind. I found my cabin, a cozy little room with a window that framed the endless blue of the ocean, and unpacked my things with a sense of accomplishment. As I stood on the deck, feeling the gentle sway of the ship beneath my feet, I realized that this was more than a trip. It was a declaration, a statement that I mattered, that my happiness was worth pursuing, and that even at 80, I could still embrace change and adventure. The other passengers bustled around me, their faces unfamiliar but open and kind. I caught snippets of conversations, laughter, and music drifting through the air. For the first time in a long while, I felt a stirring of connection, a quiet promise that I might find companionship and warmth among these strangers. That night, as the ship sailed into the darkened sea, I lay in bed staring out at the stars, feeling a mixture of nervousness and hope. I didn't know what awaited me on this journey, but I knew one thing for certain: I was choosing to honor my birthday by embracing life in all its uncertainty and possibility. The silence of my apartment was behind me now, replaced by the gentle rhythm of the waves and the murmur of new voices. I was ready to step into this new chapter, to find joy where I could, and to rediscover the love and connection that had felt so distant just days before. With a quiet smile, I closed my eyes and drifted to sleep, knowing that tomorrow held the promise of new friendships and unexpected happiness. The morning sun spilled through the small porthole of my cabin, casting a golden glow on the crisp white sheets. I woke feeling strangely light, as if the heavy weight of loneliness I'd carried for weeks had finally lifted, even if only a little. Outside, the ship gently rocked with the rhythm of the sea, a soothing motion that promised something new and unknown. Stepping onto the deck, the air was crisp and salty, filling my lungs with a freshness that felt almost like a rebirth. The vast expanse of the ocean stretched endlessly before me, a shimmering blue canvas that invited me to leave behind the shadows of my past. I pulled my shawl tighter around my shoulders and took a tentative step forward, the wooden planks warm beneath my feet. The ship was alive with movement and color. Passengers milled about, their faces lit with smiles and curiosity. Children laughed as they chased each other near the pool, couples held hands as they strolled along the promenade, and groups gathered around tables chatting and sharing stories. It was a vibrant world, so different from the quiet solitude of my apartment, and yet, I felt a flicker of belonging stirring inside me. I wandered slowly, taking in the sights and sounds, feeling both vulnerable and hopeful. The hum of conversation drifted through the air, a comforting background to the gentle crash of waves against the hull. I noticed the crew members moving gracefully, their friendly greetings and warm smiles creating an atmosphere of welcome. For the first time in days, I felt the tight knot of loneliness loosen just enough to breathe. Tentatively, I approached a small cafe where a few passengers were seated, sipping coffee and reading newspapers. I chose a table near the window and ordered a cup of tea, savoring the familiar warmth as I watched the endless horizon. The chatter around me was a soothing balm, and I found myself relaxing into the flow of life aboard the ship. A woman seated nearby caught my eye and smiled kindly. "First time on a cruise?" she asked, her voice gentle and inviting. I nodded, returning her smile. "Yes, it is. It's a little overwhelming, but also exciting." She laughed softly. "I felt the same when I first came aboard. You get used to it quickly, and before you know it, this place feels like a little community." Her name was Margaret, a widow in her 70s who had been traveling alone for a few days already. We chatted about the ship, the destinations ahead, and the little adventures waiting just beyond the horizon. Her easy warmth made me feel seen and heard in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. As the day unfolded, I found myself drawn out of my shell by the gentle encouragement of the crew and fellow passengers. I joined a group for a light stretching class on the sun deck, laughing at my own awkwardness and delighted by the camaraderie that bloomed in shared effort. Later, I wandered into the ship's library, where a cozy nook invited me to lose myself in a novel, the quiet companionship of words soothing my restless heart. The ship's dining hall was a revelation. I took a seat at a communal table, my nerves tingling with anticipation. Around me were faces of all ages, each carrying their own stories and histories. Conversation sparked easily over the clink of glasses and the clatter of silverware, and I found myself sharing bits of my own story, my love of books, my fondness for music, and yes, the bittersweet reason I was here. By evening, I had exchanged names and smiles with several passengers. There was Harold, a retired schoolteacher with a quick wit, and Susan, a lively woman who had recently taken up painting. Their stories were windows into lives as rich and varied as my own, and in their company, the ache of being forgotten began to fade, replaced by a budding sense of connection. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, a group gathered on the deck to watch the sunset. I stood among them, feeling the cool breeze against my skin and the soft murmur of voices around me. The beauty of the moment was almost overwhelming, the vast sea, the endless sky, the shared silence of strangers brought together by chance. In that shared space, I felt a profound shift. The loneliness that had clung so tightly seemed to dissolve into the fading light. Here, among these new faces, I was not invisible. I was part of something larger, a tapestry of stories woven together by the simple human need for connection. That night, as I settled into my cabin, I reflected on the day. The unfamiliar had become a little less daunting, and the strangers had become companions on this journey. The fear of being alone on my birthday was replaced by a quiet hope that perhaps family could be found in unexpected places. I fell asleep to the gentle rocking of the ship, the distant sound of laughter and music mingling with the whisper of the waves. For the first time in a long while, I felt the stirrings of joy, a fragile but real promise that I was not alone, and that this journey was only just beginning. Over the next few days, the cruise began to feel less like a strange new world and more like a gathering place, a patchwork of stories and laughter woven together by strangers who, like me, sought connection. It was surprising how quickly bonds formed among those of us who had come aboard with our own scars and secrets, our own reasons for seeking something beyond the familiar. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the deck in warm light, I found myself drawn into a circle of passengers seated around a cluster of small tables pushed together. There was Margaret, whose gentle humor had become a comforting presence, Harold, whose quick wit kept us all chuckling, Susan, whose eyes sparkled with the joy of rediscovering her passion for painting, and a few others, each carrying stories that mingled with mine, creating a shared tapestry of experience. We talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, favorite books, places we longed to visit, and the small joys that had sustained us through harder times. It felt as if the walls I had built around my heart began to soften, brick by brick, replaced by a fragile but growing trust. One woman, Anne, shared how she had come aboard after a recent loss, searching for a way to heal. Her quiet strength resonated deeply with me, reminding me that pain was a thread that connected us all. We weren't so different, these strangers turned companions, each carrying loneliness but refusing to be defined by it. Meals became a highlight of the day, not just for the food but for the community that gathered around the tables. We shared stories over steaming cups of coffee and clinking glasses, our laughter mingling with the soft hum of the ship. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't expected, revealing pieces of my life I had long kept guarded. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed with hues of rose and gold, our group gathered on the deck for a casual celebration. Someone pulled out a small cake, brought on board by a thoughtful passenger who had learned it was my birthday, and candles flickered in the fading light. We sang together, voices blending in a chorus that felt like a balm to my soul. In that moment, surrounded by these newfound friends, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. It wasn't the grand celebration I had once imagined, nor the familiar faces I had longed for, but it was real and heartfelt. They saw me. They celebrated me. And that was enough. I realized then that family wasn't just about blood or tradition, it was about the connections we choose to nurture, the love we give and receive, even from strangers. This unexpected circle had become my family, a community forged not by genetics but by shared humanity. As the days unfolded, I continued to grow more comfortable in this new role, not just as a passenger on a ship, but as a woman reclaiming her joy. I found myself laughing more freely, sharing stories with a sparkle in my eye, and embracing the simple pleasures of companionship. There were moments of quiet reflection, too, times when I would retreat to the ship's library or sit alone on the deck, watching the endless sea and feeling the gentle sway beneath me. Those moments reminded me of the journey I had taken, both outward and inward, and the strength I had found along the way. The kindness of my new friends buoyed me, their acceptance a healing salve for the wounds left by years of neglect. Together, we celebrated birthdays, shared meals, and created memories that would outlast the voyage. I found myself believing again in the possibility of love and belonging, even in the most unexpected of places. One afternoon, while sitting with Susan and Margaret, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Here I was, surrounded by people who had welcomed me without question, who had offered friendship and laughter when I had felt most alone. They had shown me that it was never too late to find connection, to build new bonds that could sustain and uplift. In those moments, the pain of my forgotten birthday softened, replaced by a quiet joy that warmed my heart. I was no longer defined by absence but by the presence of these remarkable souls who had chosen to share their stories with me. As the ship sailed onward, I knew that this journey was about more than just a cruise, it was a voyage of rediscovery, a reclaiming of the love and belonging I had thought lost. And in the company of these strangers turned family, I felt truly seen, truly loved, and truly alive. The evening air was cool and calm as we gathered on the upper deck, the sky a canvas of deep purples and soft pinks fading into the inky blue of night. The sun had slipped beneath the horizon, leaving a delicate glow that shimmered on the gentle waves. We sat in a loose circle, the murmur of the sea mingling with quiet conversation and laughter that felt both tender and genuine. It was then, amid the soft glow of lanterns and the rhythmic lull of the ocean, that the group surprised me. Someone, a young woman named Claire who had joined us earlier in the day, pulled out a small cake, modest but beautifully adorned with candles. The flickering flames danced in the twilight, casting a warm light on faces that had become dear in such a short time. "Happy birthday, Evelyn," they sang together, voices gentle and sincere, carrying across the open air like a balm to my soul. The sound wrapped around me, a cocoon of warmth and acceptance I hadn't realized I was craving so deeply. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I smiled, feeling the fragile thread of joy weave through the ache of years spent feeling unseen. Here, among these strangers who had become friends, I was truly celebrated. As the song ended, hands reached out with pieces of cake, and we shared stories and laughter beneath the emerging stars. The moment felt sacred, a quiet affirmation that love and belonging could be found beyond the ties of blood and history. For the first time in a long while, I felt the full weight of being cherished, not just tolerated or remembered out of obligation. Later, as the group dispersed and I lingered by the railing, the cool night air brushing against my skin, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The loneliness and hurt that had shadowed my birthday just days before seemed distant now, softened by the light of this unexpected gathering. I realized that the love I had longed for, the sense of family and connection, had been waiting for me in places I had never imagined. The kindness of these fellow travelers, their willingness to open their hearts and share their stories, had gifted me a profound healing. In that moment of stillness, I understood that family was not solely defined by blood or tradition. It was shaped by the bonds we nurture, the empathy we extend, and the acceptance we give and receive. These people, strangers turned companions, had become my family in a way that felt authentic and sustaining. The night deepened, and I returned to my cabin with a lightness in my step, the echoes of laughter and song still warm within me. I lay awake for a while, staring out at the stars through the small window, feeling a gratitude that was both humbling and exhilarating. This birthday, forgotten by my own family, had been transformed into a celebration of resilience, connection, and newfound joy. I was learning that even in the later chapters of life, there was room to rediscover love and to be seen, not for who I had been, but for who I was becoming. As sleep gently claimed me, I felt a quiet hope stirring in my heart, a promise that this journey was far from over, and that the family I needed most could be found in the kindness of strangers, the beauty of shared moments, and the courage to embrace life anew. After several days afloat on the shimmering waves, surrounded by the warmth of new friends and the tender embrace of this unexpected community, a quiet tug pulled at me, a need to reach out to my family, to bridge the silence that had shadowed my birthday and to share what I was discovering beyond the confines of my loneliness. One afternoon, I found a quiet corner in the ship's lounge, a small nook bathed in soft light where I could speak without the hum of the ship's daily bustle. My fingers trembled slightly as I dialed the familiar number of my daughter, Sarah. The phone felt heavier than usual in my hand, weighted with years of unspoken words and unshared sorrows. When she answered, I greeted her softly, my voice steady but layered with emotion. "Hi, Sarah. I wanted to tell you about my birthday, and where I am right now." There was a pause on the other end, a gentle hesitation that spoke volumes. She apologized quickly, her voice laced with regret. "Mom, I'm so sorry we forgot. Things have been so hectic with work and the kids. It wasn't intentional, I promise. I feel awful." Her words were sincere but fell short of the understanding I craved. I could hear the chaos in her background, the chatter of children, the clatter of dishes, reminding me of the life I was no longer fully a part of. I wanted to tell her about the cruise, the friends I had made, the moments of joy that had softened my pain, but the distance between us felt wider than the ocean beneath me. I spoke carefully, choosing my words with care. "I'm grateful for your apology, Sarah. It hurt, feeling forgotten, but I'm learning that happiness can come from unexpected places. I'm on a cruise now, surrounded by people who have made me feel loved. I wanted you to know that." Her voice softened, tinged with both relief and sadness. "Mom, I'm glad you're finding some happiness. We want to do better, I promise. Maybe when you get back, we can spend some time together." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. The offer was tentative, the promise fragile, but it was a start. Yet beneath the surface, I felt a guardedness growing, a quiet resolve not to hinge my happiness solely on their attention or approval. After the call ended, I sat back, the silence of the lounge wrapping around me once more. I understood then that while my family's regret was genuine, their world remained a place where I was often overlooked, a place where my needs could be eclipsed by the demands of daily life. It was a painful realization, but one I needed to face with honesty. I decided that I would not let their forgetfulness define me or my worth. I owed it to myself to seek joy and connection on my own terms, to nurture the bonds that uplifted me rather than those that left me aching. This cruise had shown me that family could be chosen and created, not just inherited. With a newfound clarity, I rejoined the group on deck, the sun warming my face and the laughter of my new friends filling the space around me. I felt an inner peace settle, a balance between honoring the family I came from and embracing the family I was building. That evening, as the ship sailed beneath a canopy of stars, I reflected on the delicate dance between forgiveness and self-respect. I would hold space for my family's regrets but would not let them overshadow the love I was cultivating here and now. In this moment, I felt empowered, not just as a mother or grandmother, but as a woman reclaiming her life, her happiness, and her right to be truly seen and cherished. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I faced it with courage and hope. The days that followed felt like a gentle unfolding, a slow but steady blossoming of joy and freedom that I hadn't known in years. With each sunrise, I embraced the rhythm of the ship and the warmth of my new friendships, allowing myself to be fully present in the moments that shimmered around me. Mornings began with laughter over breakfast at the communal table, where familiar faces greeted me with smiles and easy conversation. I found delight in the simple pleasures, the taste of fresh fruit, the aroma of brewing coffee, the soft murmur of voices blending into a comforting hum. The small rituals of the day became anchors, grounding me in a newfound sense of belonging. I spent afternoons exploring the ship's many offerings, joining activities when I felt adventurous and retreating to quiet corners when I craved solitude. I wandered through the art gallery, admiring paintings that stirred memories and dreams. I attended lectures about distant lands, imagining the adventures that awaited beyond the horizon. And sometimes, I simply sat on the deck, watching the endless sea and feeling the sun's gentle kiss on my skin. The freedom to choose how to spend my time was intoxicating. There was no expectation, no obligation, only the invitation to savor life on my own terms. I reveled in this autonomy, the knowledge that I was the author of my days and the keeper of my happiness. Evenings were a tapestry of shared experiences. We gathered for dinners where stories flowed as freely as the wine, where laughter echoed beneath chandeliers and the clinking of glasses marked celebrations both big and small. I found myself opening up more, sharing tales from my past and listening eagerly to the journeys of others. Each conversation deepened the connections, weaving a fabric of friendship that felt both tender and strong. One night, as the ship sailed beneath a sky strewn with stars, I joined a group for a dance. The music was lively, the air electric with joy. I hesitated at first, uncertain if my feet would remember the steps, but the encouragement of friends and the carefree spirit of the moment carried me forward. I laughed as I stumbled, feeling the lightness of being alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. This cruise became a symbol of my independence, a declaration that I could find happiness and companionship without waiting for others to remember or include me. It was a rebirth of sorts, a reclaiming of my identity beyond the roles I had long played as mother, grandmother, and caretaker. I found myself dreaming again, of future travels, of new friendships, of days filled with laughter and light. The possibility of a life unbound by past disappointments filled me with hope and excitement. Yet amid the joy, I remained grounded by the lessons of my journey. I knew that happiness was not a destination but a series of choices, moments of courage and grace woven together. I vowed to continue choosing joy, to nurture the relationships that fed my soul, and to honor the woman I was becoming. As the cruise sailed onward, I felt a quiet strength growing within me, a resilience forged in the fires of loneliness and tempered by the kindness of strangers turned family. I was no longer waiting for love to come to me, I was creating it, piece by precious piece, in the company of those who saw me, accepted me, and celebrated me. Each day was a gift, a testament to the power of connection and the capacity of the human heart to heal and grow. And as the horizon stretched endlessly before us, I faced the future with a heart open wide, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited. In the soft glow of the ship's lounge one afternoon, I found myself scribbling down names and numbers on a small piece of paper, a tangible testament to the connections I had forged during this journey. Margaret, with her gentle wisdom, Harold, whose laughter was infectious, Susan, whose zest for life was inspiring, and others who had become my chosen family in such a short time. The act of exchanging contacts felt like planting seeds for a future rich with friendship and possibility. I thought about how easy it was to drift into old patterns of expectation, waiting silently for my children or grandchildren to reach out, to remember, to care. But this voyage had taught me that waiting was no longer enough. I needed to communicate clearly, to express my needs and desires rather than assuming they would be understood. The fragile bonds of family, I realized, required nourishment and honesty if they were to thrive. With a renewed sense of purpose, I resolved to have open conversations with my family when I returned home, sharing not only my feelings of hurt and neglect but also my hopes for a relationship built on mutual respect and attentiveness. It was a delicate balance, acknowledging their shortcomings without closing the door on reconciliation. But beyond family, I knew I had to cultivate the support system that had sustained me here, those friendships born from shared stories and kindness. I made plans with Margaret and Susan to meet once we were back on land, envisioning afternoons filled with tea, laughter, and the comfort of understanding. The thought warmed me, a comforting anchor against the uncertainties ahead. I also felt a quiet determination to maintain the independence I had reclaimed. The freedom to choose joy, to seek connection beyond the familiar, was a gift I intended to cherish. I would no longer let past disappointments dictate my happiness or limit my sense of belonging. As the ship continued its journey, I found strength in the knowledge that family was not solely defined by biology but by the bonds we nurture and the love we choose to give. I was learning to embrace this truth fully, allowing it to reshape my understanding of home and belonging. Each day, I felt more empowered to create a life that honored my worth and celebrated my journey. The friendships I had made on this cruise became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the later chapters of life, new connections could blossom and enrich the soul. I also began to envision ways to share my story, to encourage others who might be feeling isolated or forgotten. Perhaps I would write, or speak, or simply offer my presence to those in need. The idea filled me with a sense of purpose beyond myself, a way to transform pain into compassion and healing. The days aboard the ship were drawing to a close, but the journey within me was far from over. I felt ready to face the challenges and joys that awaited on shore, armed with the lessons and love I had gathered along the way. As I packed my belongings, I held on to the promise I had made to myself, to continue choosing connection, to communicate openly, and to embrace the freedom to find family wherever love could be found. With a heart full of gratitude and hope, I prepared to return home, knowing that this voyage had changed me forever, and that the path ahead, though uncertain, was bright with possibility. The cruise was winding down, the final days marked by a bittersweet blend of reflection and anticipation. As the ship cut through the calm waters toward the shore, I felt a mix of emotions stirring within me, gratitude for the unexpected family I had found, hope for the future I was beginning to shape, and a quiet determination to carry this newfound strength back into my everyday life. Arriving home, the familiar sights and sounds greeted me with a strange comfort, though I carried within me a changed heart. The walls of my apartment no longer felt like a cage but a sanctuary shaped by my own choices and resilience. I unpacked slowly, each item a reminder of the journey I had taken, not just across the sea, but into the depths of my own spirit. True to my word, I reached out to Margaret and Susan soon after returning, and we began to weave a tapestry of friendship beyond the cruise. Our gatherings, whether over tea, shared meals, or quiet walks, became a source of joy and renewal. These women, once strangers, had become pillars of support, embodying the family I had chosen and nurtured. I also initiated honest conversations with my children and grandchildren, sharing my feelings about the forgotten birthday and the hurt it caused. The dialogues were sometimes difficult, marked by awkward pauses and tentative apologies, but they opened doors that had long been closed. I set clear boundaries and expressed my needs, insisting that love must be active and present, not assumed or taken for granted. While the path toward reconciliation was gradual and imperfect, I no longer felt powerless or invisible. I had reclaimed my voice and agency, standing firm in my worth and the love I deserved. It was a delicate balance, honoring my past while embracing the present, forgiving but not forgetting. Beyond family, I continued to nurture the friendships forged on the cruise and sought new connections within my community. I joined local groups, volunteered, and even began to write about my experience, hoping to inspire others who felt forgotten or alone to find their own paths to joy and belonging. Each step forward was a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the capacity for renewal at any age. I had learned that family was not solely defined by blood but by the bonds we choose to cultivate, the love we offer freely, and the courage to embrace life's uncertainties. As I settled into this new rhythm, I felt a profound peace, a knowing that I was surrounded by love, both old and new, and that I held the power to shape my own happiness. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with open arms and a hopeful heart, ready to celebrate life on my own terms. In reclaiming my story, I had found not only freedom but a deep and abiding joy. I was no longer the woman forgotten on her 80th birthday. I was Evelyn, reborn amidst the waves, embraced by chosen family, and radiant with the promise of all that was yet to come.